Hey everyone, Stevie here again to deliver another Illustrator Basics video. Today's video will include information on how to use the Artboard tool and the pen tool. The Artboard tool is a really simple tool to use. It basically just messes with the dimensions of the artboard. So you'll see here, once you click the Artboard tool, you'll actually see the width and height and the transform settings, which you can mess with and change however you see fit. So you can either shrink or expand it, or you can just use any of these little points here to expand it manually. So you should also see that there's a little artboard property here that you may not be used to. Here you can name your artboard if you neglected to do so. You can change its preset. You can also change its orientation if you wanted to, which just flips width and height. Then you can also actually add new or delete whole artboards. And the cool thing about having another artboard is if you have multiple artboards, the laser cutter will register them as separate cuts completely, meaning that artboard 1 cuts first and artboard 2 cuts second. And this may be useful for layered cuts later on. And let me show you what I mean. So if I go over to the UCP, you should see this whole one of two or 2 for 2. So you could separate maybe a picture into different layers and then cut out this layer first and then cut out the second layer. So just be mindful of that. I think it's quite useful, and yeah, if you're ever doing some sort of textured map, you may find it useful too. But that's basically the Artboard tool in a nutshell. And now we're actually ready to go on to the pen tools. So at first glance, it may seem like what you're about to learn in this section may not be entirely useful as far as things go. You know, freehand drawing with a mouse or trackpad isn't anybody's cup of tea, and in time you'll see, hopefully, the true usefulness of these tools when and if you ever use a clipping mask. In addition, you can also add your own points to any object, which will allow you to change them using the direct selection tool, which could be potentially useful, especially if someone brings you a SolidWorks file and something's just a little too far and you can add a little point there and just change it. So I would argue that it could be useful, but hopefully you'll stick around. But if you wouldn't, I can't say I blame you too much. So before we really get started on the idea of these two pen tools and what they do, I realize that I keep talking about this idea of points, and up until now you may not have any idea of what points really are. So to demonstrate what points kind of are, if I make this rectangle here and I equip the direct selection tool, you should see these 4 little blue, squares. And these 4 blue squares are points right here. And these are actually corner points. And corner points are points that are not resistant to change. They allow the direction of this rectangle to change rather quickly, and that's how we have this rectangle. So you'll see that you have this path here that immediately changes 90 degrees to form this path, and so on and so forth. But in contrast, we also have smooth points. Smooth points are resistant to the change of direction, and I'll demonstrate what I mean by actually adding some points with the pen tools. So with the pen tools, you can actually add points to any object, like I said. So when you're using the regular pen tool, you're adding anchor points. But when you're using the curvature tool, you're adding smooth points. Okay, and now using the direct selection tool, we can mess with them as we see fit. So if I highlight this point and I lift upwards, you'll see that we are indeed using a corner point. The direction of the path changes rather quickly right here. But if we actually mess with the smooth point, we'll observe something just a little different. So the first things we kind of notice here are that, yes, there's no sharp changes here. You can see that it kind of flows into one path and the other, and you'll see these things called control handles. Control handles are a part of any smooth point. Control handles allow you to actually change just how sharply the change of direction will flow. So you can either make it rather sharp or really, 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 really shallow and steep. And between every smooth point and an anchor point, you also have a control handle here that allows you to change the, base of the path, just like that. So that's just kind of how adding points works, and you may find that kind of useful. I would implore you to mess with control handles yourself. They're definitely a lot more finicky than other things. I think they're a little on the harder side to use, and they're very hard to master. I definitely don't have it mastered yet, but if you did, you could trace just about anything, which is very useful in time. Okay, so we're about done with adding points, so we'll actually explore now how the actual tools work. So starting with the pen tool, there's quite a bit of things you can do with the pen tool that may not seem obvious, but we'll focus on that on a later video. So the first point that you put down establishes your base point. And every click after that will be connected until you either switch tools like this, or until you meet back at the base point, like that. Okay? So there's also, with the pen tool, you can make a smooth point whenever you want by clicking and dragging just like that. And now you've just established a smooth point right there, which could be potentially nice, and then you can keep going, just as you normally would here. Okay, so you can also add smooth points by using the Curvature tool, but what the Curvature tool actually does is whenever you actually make that nice little curve, since it's so good at making curves, it actually uses the previous or 3 points to establish that curve. So if you notice now, if we use the direct selection tool, we'll highlight that this point that used to be an anchor point is now actually a type of smooth point. This also, you can't really see the control, now you can see the control handle is also now a smooth point. And this is also a smooth point. So all of these anchor points were now converted to semi-smooth points, which may affect your drawing of sorts. So if you just wanted one smooth point at a time, you would want to click and drag with the pen tool, but if you didn't mind and we're just looking for an optimal curve, you would want to use the Curvature tool. Okay, so the Curvature tool works pretty similarly to the pen tool, so I'll click off of that for now. So if we're using the Curvature tool, remember that the first 2 points, if I haven't already said it, establish kind of a direction that you're heading towards, and the third point actually establishes the curve. So we see what direction we're heading towards, and now the third point is actually showing you what the curve will actually look like, just like that. And then the rest of it kind of works like the pen tool. You either meet back in the middle, or you just keep going until you switch tools completely. So it's also nice to know that with the Curvature tool, there's no click and drag aspect. So what you see with the curve tool is just about what you get. There's no little hidden tricks. Okay, so there's 2 last things that I kind of want to point out before I end this video, and that's the idea of that the pen tool can actually delete whole points whenever it wants. So if you have the pen tool equipped right here, you can go over to where the points just were, and you can just delete them. So say we wanted to just have a connection between this point and this point, we can delete the point in here entirely by just clicking on that point that's in the middle, and then just those 2 points would now connect. And you can do the same thing with the direct selection tool. It's just a little faster if, say, you're using the pen tool here and you're clicking a bunch, but you misclick here, so you can just take it away rather quickly. So if you misclicked like right there, you can just take it away, which is nice to know in case you're really actively tracing something and you want to be very careful. And then lastly, if you switch tools, or you find that you go back to the Curvature tool and you want to go back to the pen tool, but you see that everything just kind of ended here, you can resume any trace that you left off in by clicking and dragging from the last point you were just at. And this actually just makes a smooth point, but you can make that smooth point I guess kind of not matter by attaching the next point to its handle and continuing on like nothing happened. So that's basically everything I kind of have to say about the pen tool, the Curvature tool, and the Artboard tool. I understand that this video may have been a little more on the rough side of things, and it's probably because the pen tools are actually what I'm worst at explaining, and I apologize for that. I have a lot to learn myself, But hopefully you still found this video useful, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next couple videos. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks for stopping by. See ya.